Have you ever wondered which Dark Souls boss would be the most terrifying in real life? Well, lucky you, because I'm going to be answering that in this video. Well, only for Dark Souls 3, as I've already made these type of videos for the previous games except Sekiro and Demon Souls, so you should go check out those when you have the time. So yeah, you heard me correctly. I'll be going over all the Dark Souls 3 bosses and rank them based on who would be the scariest IRL. I'll be ranking them in 3 categories: not scary, moderately scary, and nightmare fuel. And you know it's October, which means it's Halloween season, so this is the best time to make this video. Also, if you like content like this, then be sure to like and subscribe. And if you don't, then I don't know, the dancer is gonna come down from your ceiling and crush you with her legs. You know what, never mind, I feel like you would actually like that. Anyways, just subscribe if you want to. Also remember, this video is just for fun. Everyone's opinions are gonna be different, so just keep that in mind. But without wasting any more of your time, let's start with the not scary tier. Lothric is literally just a super weak, feeble guy who hides from his responsibilities and shuts himself away in his room like an otaku. He's not scaring anyone. In fact, his whole vibe is more like someone who's running away from the world rather than facing it head on. There's nothing intimidating about him at all. If anything, he just seems fragile and, withdrawn. His appearance doesn't give off any sense of danger or fear. It seems like if you blow on him, he would even fall over. So yeah, Lothric is far from scary. Half-Light. Let's be honest, Half-Light is just an ordinary guy. Sure, he has some light-based powers like summoning spirits from the ground, but aside from that, there's really nothing about him that stands out as scary or intimidating. He doesn't have that monstrous appearance or overwhelming presence that you would expect from a Souls boss. In fact, he just looks like some random person you'd walk past without even noticing. Compared to other bosses that tower over you or send chills down your spine, Half-Light barely leaves an impression. He's forgettable at best. If you saw him in real life, I promise you no one would be afraid of him. There's just nothing about his looks or his presence that would scare anyone. Bro, have you seen Sister Friede? There's no way anyone in their right mind would be scared of her. I mean, she just looks like a medieval nun. Let's be honest, most of you watching this video are probably going to be simping for her instead. Yes, I'm talking to you, the guy and girl watching this. I bet you'd be more into her than scared of her. Sure, her eyes and, fire powers are pretty intimidating and she can definitely put up a tough fight, but we're not talking about powers here. We're just ranking bosses based off appearance alone, and honestly, there's nothing about her looks that screams scary. She doesn't have that monstrous or creepy vibe like some of the other bosses do. She's more mysterious than, how can I say, frightening, I guess. In fact, without her powers, she'd probably just blend into the background. So yeah, when it comes down to pure looks, Sister Friede doesn't seem frightening at all. I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't be afraid of her if they encountered her in real life. Now let's move on to the moderately scary tier, and here we have Champion Gravetender and his wolf. The Gravetender himself isn't scary at all. Far from it. He's just a regular guy. Nothing about him really stands out as intimidating or fearsome. If you saw him in real life, you'd probably just walk right past him without even thinking twice. But his wolf? That's a whole different story. That big ass wolf would definitely make me freak out if I ever saw it in real life. The size alone is terrifying, but when you add how fast it is, it becomes a whole nightmare. Not nightmare fuel, but scary. Imagine seeing something that huge moving at crazy speeds charging right at you. It's enough to make anyone panic. The wolf is really what brings the fear factor to this fight. Without it, the Gravetender wouldn't be anything special, but the wolf definitely makes everything way more intense. If you encountered it in real life, I'm pretty sure most people would be terrified. Champion Gundyr. Gundyr is literally just a bodybuilder on super steroids. Sure, he's tall and can fight, but let's be real, plenty of people can do that. I mean, look at Jon Jones for example. Don't get me wrong though, I still placed him in the moderately scary category because honestly, now that I think about it, if you're walking alone one night and saw this massive dude charging at you, that would definitely be terrifying. So you know what, I take it back. Gundyr is definitely intimidating as hell. He may not have a creepy or monstrous appearance of some of the other bosses, but his sheer size and presence are enough to make anyone think twice before checking him. He's definitely someone you would not want to mess with. Even though he's more like a roided up bodybuilder, the idea of him coming at you is low-key terrifying. So yeah, he's definitely scarier than I originally thought. The Abyss Watchers might not have the same massive size as Gundyr, but what makes them stand out is the fact that they're undead soldiers corrupted by an ancient evil supervirus. That alone definitely bumps them up a bit in my opinion. They have this haunted vibe about them that makes them, pretty unsettling, plus they can imbue their weapons with fire, which also adds to their intimidation. Now I know that I said earlier in the video that I won't be ranking powers and only, based on appearance, but I feel like the whole Abyss corruption is key to their character. Even without considering their fire powers, the fact that they're fighting while corrupted by this dark force makes them even scarier. They might not be monstrous giants like some of the other bosses, but there's something about their design and backstory that gives them an edge in the fear department. These men are definitely kinda scary, not in a monstrous way but in a dark, eerie way. Pontiff Sullivan. Sullivan has a somewhat humanoid-like build, but what really creeps me out about him isn't just his large stature or the fact that he wields both the profane flame and dark moon magic, it's his face. Like seriously, what's going on there? Is that a mask or is his actual face? And if it is a mask, looking at his whole body, I'm not sure I even want to know what's underneath. There's just something really unsettling about his appearance. But it's not just his looks that are scary. Sullivan's mindset is what makes him truly horrifying. He's a power-hungry tyrant with zero regard for others, and that adds another layer of fear. He's not just a powerful figure with intimidating magic, but a cold, calculated ruler who's bent on dominating and controlling everything around him. So yeah, Sullivan is definitely scary on a physical and psychological level. Lorien is the twin brother of Lothric, and just by looking at him, you can tell this man is huge. His size alone makes him pretty intimidating. Sure, he might be crippled, but don't let that fool you. This guy can teleport, which only adds to the fear factor. Plus, he's still an incredibly powerful warrior, so even with his condition, he's someone you wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of. But even if you ignore his abilities and just focus on his appearance, Lorien is definitely somewhat kinda creepy to look at. His massive and battle-worn look gives off an imposing presence. He doesn't need to do much to make you feel uneasy. His sheer size and the way he guards himself are enough to make anyone nervous. Vort was once a knight of Pontiff Sullivan, but he got transformed into this monstrous beast, and looking at him is straight up horrifying. His massive hulking form is not pleasant to look at, and the fact that it's a mutated man running around on all fours is crazy. Just imagine this thing charging at you. His wild movements also adds to his scariness. While the Crystal Sage may not be as fast or look as animalistic as Vort, what I find the most scary about him is the fact that he looks like an undead wizard. Which, to be fair, that's technically what he is, but at the same time, for me, I usually find humanoid creatures slightly more terrifying compared to actual beasts. And the Crystal Sage is the best example of that. Like, imagine walking in the woods one night and seeing this giant humanoid undead looking creature cooking up some weird magical potions. Come on, that's gotta be a frightening sight. And because of this, I placed him here. If we're talking about Gael when we first met him, then he would be at the bottom of this list, as he's just an ordinary looking guy like us. But if we're speaking about him at his current state, then he for sure would be scary. I mean, he's now slightly larger, a bit deformed, his stomach area is hollowed out, his cape have a life of its own, now he's moving around like a madman, and he's technically a cannibal now, going around eating anyone who has a dark soul. So yeah, he's definitely not in the right state of mind. Now again, going off of appearance only, he's definitely scary for sure. Eudix Gundyr. Wait, what's so scary about Gundyr? I mean, just like the champion version, he's just a large... Oh, never mind. Eudix Gundyr is indeed a terrifying figure. He's corrupted with the pus of man, which is basically a different form of the abyss. I mean, just take a good look at this thing. The transformation looks horrifying, his grotesque features and the swirling mass of corruption that surrounds him makes him feel like a living nightmare. However, despite this, he's still not the scariest creature in the game. Next up we have the Nameless King. The Nameless King might not seem super scary at first, but then you have to remember that this is basically a super tall undead deity. He has an imposing presence, but it's when you think about his abilities that things get truly terrifying. This guy can shoot lightning, and just the sight of that is enough to make anyone feel uneasy. But he doesn't stop there, he also rides a freaking dragon, or a storm drake, which is pretty much the same thing. Just imagine encountering someone who can command lightning and have a whole ass dragon. The combination of his size, power, and the dragon adds a whole new level of intimidation. So yeah, the Nameless King is definitely someone you wouldn't want to mess with. At the end of the moderately scary tier, we have the Soul of Cinder. What makes the Soul of Cinder ranks this high is that he's literally the embodiment of many souls who link the first flame. Just thinking about that makes the Soul of Cinder a bit unnerving. The idea that it's basically a sentient body filled with souls of countless warriors is truly terrifying. The armor itself looks really badass, but it also has this weird creepy vibe to it. And because of all of those things, I placed him here. Okay, so let's move on to Nightmare Fuel tier. The first boss or group of people here are the Deacons of the Deep. Don't lie to yourself, the Deacons would be absolute nightmare fuel in real life. Just imagine coming across an endless horde of undead Deacons with glowing red eyes. That alone would be terrifying. It's not just one or two of them, but a massive crowd all moving towards you at once, and that's enough to send anyone running. Now in terms of appearance, all of them have an undead look, but the ones that would scare the most are the big guys, especially since they follow in the footsteps of Aldrich, and if you know anything about him, he's basically a cannibal. And these guys probably are too. The deacons can even curse you, which even makes them scarier. While I'm not really counting that towards their placement, knowing that they have the ability just adds to their fear factor. The thought of being surrounded by these undead chanting deacons is unsettling on its own, but add your dark powers and it becomes a nightmare scenario. In real life, the deacons of the deep would be a horrifying sight. Dancer of the Burial Valley. I know the community simps for her a lot, but let's be honest, in real life she would be absolutely horrifying. The first thing that stands out is her giant lanky body. Her tall and unnatural form alone would make anyone feel uneasy, and then there are her movements, graceful yet menacing, which only adds to the fear factor. But it doesn't stop there. She's not just some creepy figure, she's a mutated person, which makes her even more disturbing in my opinion. There's something terrifying about someone who was once human, or at least human looking, now twisted into something monstrous. On top of that, she's a highly skilled swordswoman who can wield both flame and dark magic. In real life, all this would make her a nightmare to encounter. Aldrich was a saint. He was also a very evil person. You see, Aldrich loved to devour people. He did this so much to the point where he became a massive sludge. After a while, Aldrich didn't just want to eat regular people, he also wanted to devour gods as well, hence his name Aldrich, Devourer of Gods. His eyes were set on Gwendolyn, and in no time he was able to partially or fully consume Gwendolyn. You see, Aldrich is straight up a horror villain. I mean, a guy who ate so much people that he became a massive sludge sounds like something a horror director back in the day would come up with. Okay, appearance aside, the fact that he's known to be a cannibal would make a lot of people fear him. And what's even more terrifying is the fact that once Aldrich devours a person, he can use their abilities and powers. Which for regular people, that wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, apart from the fact that, you know, he would most likely eat us. But if we were talking about him while he's devouring Gwendolyn, that would be terrifying. Because Gwendolyn can wield Dark Moon magic. And again, not ranking them based off powers, but it would definitely add to the intimidation aspect. So yeah, Aldrich is straight up nightmare fuel in my opinion. Scariest. He's literally a schizophrenic dragon man that can wield ice powers. What's not to fear about him? Dragon Slayer armor. The Dragon Slayer armor is definitely pretty intimidating. One of the most unnerving parts about it is that it seems to be alive. At first you might be thinking, well, what's so scary about a sentient suit of armor? But you stop thinking that once you realize what's controlling it. The creatures controlling the armor look like something straight out of a cosmic horror film, and that alone makes it terrifying. Not only that, not only is it controlled by these beings, but the armor itself is huge. Its large imposing figure would strike fear in anyone who comes across it. The combination of its size, the cosmic horror elements, and the idea of an empty suit of armor being controlled by unknown forces is what makes the Dragon Slayer armor so frightening. In real life, encountering something like this would be a true nightmare. Despite his relatively human looking build and somewhat kind nature, Yorm is still a freaking giant. I mean, this man stands at around 20 or maybe 30 feet tall. That is insane, and he's fast as hell too. I don't think I have to go into more details about him. I mean, just look at him. Old Demon King. I mean, it's a giant fire demon looking monster that wields an axe. If you tell me you wouldn't be scared of this thing, you'd be lying. Sure, the ancient wyvern may seem like a joke in the game since you can literally one-shot it, but let's be honest, it's a dragon-like creature. Just the thought of seeing something like this in real life is enough to send shivers down your spine. Shit, if I ever saw this thing flying around in my city, I would think that it's the end of the world or something. Same thing goes for Midir, except that Midir looks way more scarier and canonically, am I saying that word right? Whatever, he's way more powerful than the ancient wyvern, that's why he ranks higher. Demon Prince. The Demon Prince instills a primal fear of what demons would look like, and while its design in the game may seem a bit generic, seeing the creature in real life would send shivers down anyone's spine. Just imagine encountering something like this up close. On top of that, its large stature is intimidating. The sheer size of the Demon Prince makes it clear that if you ever encounter this thing, just run for your life. Its beast-like behavior only adds to the terror, so it's definitely not a being you can reason with. These elements combined are the main reasons why I place the Demon Prince this high on the list. The mixture of its fiery look, imposing size, and feral nature creates an overwhelming sense of dread. In a real-life situation, encountering the Demon Prince would make anyone shit themselves. Cursed Rotted Greatwood. The Greatwood was once a spirit tree that people of the undead settlement used to seal away their curses in times of need. Over time, these curses damaged the tree, turning it into this abomination. So most of the creatures and bosses I've mentioned so far could make a little bit of sense in the real world. For example, Midir, despite being a dragon, could easily be passed off as a government experiment. on ancient reptiles, Gundyr could pass for just an overgrown guy with gifted strength, but the Great Wood is one of the only things that would not make sense at all. It's literally just a giant sentient cursed tree. This thing is straight up nightmare fuel, plus it's disgusting as well. I mean, it has a fleshy arm, it has balls that's basically filled with tree pus. Everything about the rotted wood is unnerving, and because of this I decided just based off appearance alone, it deserves to be at the number 2 spot. Also, side note, a lot of people shit on the Great Wood's OST, but personally I think it's really good. It captures the horror aspects of the fight really well. Now, at the number 1 spot for the scariest, most horrifying boss in Dark Souls 3, we have High Lord Wolnir. Wolnir is a giant skeletal figure in a dark room filled with cursed gas. Of course he would be at the number 1 spot. I mean, just look at him. I don't even have to explain why he's here. Now I know some people might say, but he's just a skeleton. Yeah, but imagine encountering this thing one night. He's just straight up nightmare fuel, and that's why I placed him at the number 1 spot. So that was it for ranking the Dark Souls 3 bosses based on who would be the scariest in real life. If you like content like this, then be sure to like and subscribe, only if you want to. Other than that, shout out to my Patreons and have a good one.